Chapter 22. Blackstone Booms. I could not put Blackstone out of me mind, whether I wished to know it or not. People spoke of the damned place throughout the Keetish wilds. I heard all the news. Blackstone boomed, growing it as it seduced Keats with the illusion of a better life. And believe me when I say there are many, many Keats scattered in the wilds. They asked for tales about it. I had what they wanted, but could not bear to share with them. So, without me help, the stories grew even wilder. Leusios was more renowned than even his ego could hope for. Mistress Murgathwin was an inspiration to hard-working women everywhere, and even the bumbling barfrain rump was remade into a masterful and wily creature. Vibnia had managed to avoid fame somehow, and Elayna, well, she was yet to be famous. That would come later. However, her father's death was no longer a shadowy murder, but a battle with demons. And what of Kerne? He may have been dead to me, but they immortalized him as a great champion who had simply vanished and would return in Blackstone's moment of need. Jorwin Weaver, The Keetish Cycle. "Who's there?" shouted the militia woman. Ackerboss silently withdrew into the shadows. The cartload of supplies was frustratingly out of reach. He eyed the barrel of tar nestled amidst the tools and food stocks. It was too far away for him to ignite it, even with his talents. He watched the militia woman move closer, swinging her torch. She was called Dalthwin. Yes, he knew all of them by name, even if they did not know him. Killing her was not an option. Perhaps he should have killed Mikreg when he returned from exile. He'd not expected Elayna to allow pragmatism to overrule the man's crime. Yes, the man had guilt. However, Ackerboss suspected he had been a tool, nothing more. Stupidity, prejudice, and gullibility, while corrosive, did not deserve death. At Elayna's instigation, the militia had scoured the mountains, and Mikreg had found the crack made by Ackerboss in an outcrop above the mine road. That could have been natural, but the wooden wedges pulled out and discarded nearby were damning. Normally, the wedges would have been lost in the rockfall, but Mikreg's discovery had alerted everyone to his skullduggery. He whispered an incantation and slipped away from Dalthwin and the cart. He had to choose an easier target, but there were so many more patrols. Fortunately, this area around the mines was a maze of paths and cliffs. He ducked back abruptly as another 5 militia came down the mountain path, their leather shoes crunching on grit and loose stones. He took a different route while listening hard. His sixth sense became agitated. There were too many patrols in his vicinity. Had the cart been a lure? His soft boots trod in something sticky. He froze and looked down. A slick of tar had been poured across the path to mark any passer-by. Blessed divine, and all the spirits! It was a trap. He sprinted away to the left, conscious of the tarry footprints he was leaving behind. Ackerboss skidded to a stop. 2 militia folk with torches blocked his escape through a crevice. He weighed the decision before him: climb up the sheer cliff face at risk of falling to his death, or slitting their throats. There was a shout and then a horn blast from where he had left his footprint in the tar. Several horns sounded in sequence around him. The sound of running feet came closer. He rotated the knife in his hand and swore. Yes, killing the 2 guards was the easy way out, but not the right way. With a scowl and a frown, he started the dangerous climb. An alliance was born from Leusios' new openness to Elayna. After Mikreg discovered evidence of sabotage, the council decided the orcs were tomorrow's problem. Instead, Blackstone united to prosecute a war against their unknown antagonist. After her plan almost caught the saboteur, Elayna saw something different from Leusios: respect. Now he consulted her regularly. Time and time again she proved to have a shrewd sense for the right action. He followed through on his promises, and they even discussed his business affairs. She enjoyed that immensely, giving a pragmatic suggestion here and showing a little more empathy there. Several times she pointed out that Gawain was cheating him.
"Yes, I know," admitted Leusios one day as they walked through Blackstone. "But he makes me more money than Trubios ever would."
He stopped and waved towards some half-built walls of stone.
"So, what do you think of the house?" he asked proudly. "I took the Durian idea of underfloor heating," he explained, pointing through the doorway to a tiled floor. "We lit the hearth fire today, and it warms the whole house."
"You'll need a roof to keep the heat in," she laughed. Jokes aside, she was fascinated by Leusios's boyish enthusiasm and formidable intellect. He had a genuine talent for design. "My turn," she said. "I've news from Notarius."
"Oh?"
"All those contracts from Valiados have made northern wares fashionable in the Empire. Ketis wool and furs, Canaries crafts and textiles. They can't get enough of them."
"Well, that will please Mikrig and his hunters," said Leusios. "With more sheep and the introduction of Durian pigs, we have enough meat. They can hunt for fur instead."
Elayna bid him farewell with an affectionate kiss on his cheek. She knew he wanted more, and maybe one day he would get it. In truth, there was no one else who interested her. While there were several other handsome men who caught her eye, only Leusios could match her in wit or thought. She sighed as she headed for the church of the Corpus Vigilios. She missed Kerne, and had to admit her feelings for Leusios. Nevertheless, a stubbornness in her denied him the prize for being the last man standing. Leusios was in a foul mood. His optimism from Acrobos's earlier success was gone. He had underestimated the people of Blackstone.
"Tell me again how you were discovered?"
For once, Acrobos was not pacing. He stood against the wall, arms folded. "Someone disturbed my preparations for a landslide, but never told Blackstone."
"That makes no sense,"
Leusios snapped. "It makes perfect sense," asserted Acrobos calmly. "I readied that rockfall before the great storm. By Jorwin's own words, we know he and Kerne had been in the mountains at that time. He left before mentioning the sabotage, and Kerne died." Acrobos's eyes may have glittered with frustration, but when he next spoke, it was with a gentle curiosity. "Do you regret losing Kerne?"
"Why regret what had already been lost?"
growled Leusios. The news was not all bad, he decided. Many Durian families had abandoned their gold mines and were too badly depleted to return any time soon. Only Thelianus, Caesonius, Lucius, and Gawain still actively dug gold out.
"Gawain Bovenhaben,"
muttered Leusios.
"He has a lust for wealth beyond any man I have ever known."
Acrobos nodded. "He has several thugs now and uses intimidation quietly to leave rivals fearful." The abbot sipped his water thoughtfully.
"And he sinks new shafts ever closer to the Blackstone itself. Watch him most closely of all."
"It would be better to end him now," insisted Acrobos. Leusios cleared his throat, feeling the tug of temptation. Could he sanction killing Gawain? He changed the subject and frowned at the Catalixos in suspicion.
"Was the death of the Thaliani chief engineer your doing?"
"Talk is that he was knifed in a heated argument with the Caesonii. There is no blood on my hands. Blame it on ill will between the Prima Familia, or maybe the cultist assassin."
"I do not accept your theory of a cultist assassin," snapped Leusios. "Have we seen any evidence since Hal's murder?"
Acrobos cocked his head. "Maybe. I sense something is amiss. Mikrig's attack on Kerne does not ring true. He's a bully and a brute, but not a murderer."
"Foolishness and excess go together with alcohol,"
Leusios said dismissively.
"Without discipline, there is only chaos."
He had said that so many times to Kerne. Orcs were children of Orki, and chaos was in their blood. In that moment, he was unexpectedly haunted by the memory of the ugly half-orc child in tears running into this very room for comfort. Comfort that he had never known how to give. The sudden recollection unsettled him. He turned and walked over to the window. He looked down into the vapors rising from the mirror mist.
"The attack on Elayna was a tragedy,"
he murmured, and his shoulders sagged. She had entrusted Kerne to him. Acrobos's question echoed back to him. Did he regret losing Kerne? That was all in the past now. The boy was gone. What could he gain from denying the truth? He drew in a ragged breath and sighed.
"And so was the loss of her son,"
he admitted.
"How many cultist sects are there?"
Leusios asked Motarius. He had tracked the merchant to his storehouse that was crowded with crates, barrels, and amphorae.
"It's hard to be sure,"
the older man admitted. He looked up from the contents of a crate and checked around nervously.
"The followers of Mursos are a fractious lot. Ever since the Corpus smashed them, they've been petty factions, as likely to kill each other than anyone else. They've not posed a threat to the Empire for years. I've warned you before. Talking openly about them is unwise."
Elayna's trying to find out who killed her father. Leusios raised his hands in apology.
"Sorry, I spoke without thinking." "A trait you would be wise to curtail,"
Motarius warned, a finger pointing at him to stab the truth home.
"You are dealing with an extremely dangerous individual. To think you are smarter is to invite disaster. If the killer is a cultist and they glean any hint that you are trying to identify them, they will kill you."
Leusios made an expansive gesture to cover his discomfort and changed the subject.
"So, I heard you gave up your mine."
Motarius gave him a sly grin.
"I sold it to Caesonius. I did not have the coin to sustain it. All those misfortunes made the cost spiral, and I've found a much easier mine to dig."
Leusios brushed back an errant lock of white hair and grinned.
"The spice trade is going well, then?" "Valiados has won a great victory against Jasfa, and is advancing on Copa, a major hub for spice. My oldest son, Marcos, is working with the contacts from Valiados to secure new spice deals. Pepper, saffron, ginger, corvée, cardamom. All very lucrative. Then I have my wine business."
Motarius pressed his palm to his heart.
"I am proud to have rescued my countrymen from your foul brew of bitter weeds. It's a public service, really,"
he explained, his moon-like face glowing with benevolence. He lifted a bottle out of the sawdust in the crate. It was made from heavily glazed terracotta and plugged with wax.
"This, however, this is true luxury."
His hand caressed its curves with obvious delight.
"What is it?"
asked Leusios.
"Ah, you desire to be a man of sophistication, don't you, Leusios? Well,"
the older man presented him with the bottle.
"all the way from Carnatia, called by some the City of Sin,"
he added with a mischievous wink.
"This is Oisi, made using the finest grapes and matured for 20 years.
Leusios shook his head.
"Who would make a drink and then leave it for nigh on half a lifetime?"
Motarius rolled his eyes.
"The flavors mature and become—"
He smacked his lips on his fingers.
"Unique."
He tapped a symbol of two interlocking circles.
"House Dovres is the foremost of the Oisi families. For you."
Motarius presented the bottle with care.
"My first shipment almost sold out the moment my compatriots heard I had brought it in, but I can spare you just this one." "Thank you."
Leusios was intrigued by the idea that a drink could be stored for 2 decades and still be worth buying.
I look forward to tasting it.
Motarius held on to the bottle as he made one last effort to explain.
Think, Leusios. You fortify the wine with spirits, then age it in a cask, then taste, sort, and age it again. Then bottle and age it some more. You only do that knowing that your older self or your children can sell it. Oisi is the tangible proof of the Pax Duria. Only a peaceful and stable society that thinks in decades rather than days can produce it. Savor this, and you savor civilization.
Elayna was helping Golina with her endless workload. Golina had hired several other townsfolk, and Leusios had convinced her to build a workshop to his design. Elayna noticed that prosperity was making the seamstress decidedly plump.
I'm having problems with Kendlewick's leather, Golina complained. He needs to embrace these new ideas from Duria, or I'll ask Trubios to buy in supplies from Lassavordum.
She never lost her harassed look, but her frown deepened whenever she talked about Blackstone's tanner.
I'll talk to Kendlewick,
Elayna promised. Golina's son, Wethrin, interrupted them.
Elayna, Leusios is here.
Golina gave Elayna a perfunctory hug.
See you tomorrow, dear.
You're in a good mood,
Leusios observed with a grin as he and Elayna walked towards his new house. It was late summer. The air was still warm, and a few clouds, high above the tallest peaks, drifted through an evening sky that was a sweep of darkening shades of crimson and violet.
I've been hearing rumors of extravagance, Master Miller,
she chided him mischievously. Leusios affected a look of mock surprise.
Murgathwin's throwing a party?
She swatted him.
Don't be mean. No, your new house. So, what's the fuss?
They've laid planking on the upper floor, so now you can look out over all of Blackstone.
His boyish joy was infectious.
Race you?
She darted ahead. He made a good-natured growl and gave chase. They laughed as they struggled to be the first up the stairs. She slipped ahead at the last step, and her laughter fell into stunned surprise. The rafters were still bare, waiting for tiles from Lasavornum, so the expanse of the twilight sky stretched overhead. Beyond them, the first stars were igniting. In the center of the bare floor, he had set a table for 2, spread with many of her favorites. 2 beeswax candles waved at her invitingly. Only a year ago, such a feast would have been vulgar. Now that Blackstone prospered again, no one would begrudge Leusios a little extravagance. She spun back to him, and she saw her smile reflected in his.
This is wonderful.
He bowed and gestured to the table.
Would you do me the honor of dining with me?
You and your Durian manners.
She laughed, but she let him guide her to a cushioned recliner made by the artisans of Ephanius.
What wood is this?
Cedar, he replied, enjoying her delight. She followed the carved designs in the frame with her fingertips and felt the richness of the embroidered fabric.
This,
said Leusios, breaking the seal on Motarius's bottle,
is called Oisi, and it's only a year younger than us.
Elayna laughed and watched him pour the rich ruby liquid out into 2 dainty clay beakers that were beautifully painted with abstract designs.
It's strong, he warned.
20 years? Well, all 3 of us are adults then.
She grinned impishly. They ate, drank, talked, and laughed with the ease of 2 people with more than affection between them. Then at times they shared comfortable silences, touching each other through their eyes and smiles. It was one such moment that Elayna rose and went to the window and looked out at the warm lights from the old fire inn. She was lightheaded from the Oisi and profoundly relaxed. She leaned on the windowsill and savored the laughter and song drifting up from where Keats and Durians had spilled out of the inn and into the market round to enjoy the late summer evening. The town had expanded out towards Elwith's Rock, and everywhere new stone buildings were going up.
Blackstone has changed, Leusios, she declared with satisfaction. I feel such excitement and hope once again. It's all down to Mistress Murgathwin and you.
She heard his soft tread on the floorboards as he came to join her. He put an arm around her shoulders.
"And to you," he said sincerely. "You were right about the sabotage. We might not have caught them yet, but they're finding it harder to make mischief."
He had delivered on his promises, she thought, realizing the barriers she had raised between them were gone. "I still miss Kerne." It was a truth that she would never betray.
"I know."
He leaned down and nudged the awkward moment aside with a kiss. She turned and drew him closer, her inhibitions melting away in desire and alcohol. Their lips opened wider, and the kiss became deeper as she let affection flare into passion. Elayna spat. The dust was everywhere, in her clothes, in her eyes, and on her tongue. The air smelt and tasted of dry earth. She worked her mouth to produce enough saliva to spit again. The sky was an impossible blue without a single cloud, and the heat was oppressive. She looked about herself and gasped. She was in a desert of bones, bleached white bones. She picked up a skull. "Put it back," said a sorrowful voice that she recognized immediately. Her heart skipped a beat. "Kerne?" She turned towards him. "There's too many to clean anyway," he said mournfully. The half-orc was standing naked amongst the bones with his arms outstretched. A cloaked figure was carefully painting over his human features with a brush that warped reality and left his handsome features shadowy and demonic. "Stop!" she shouted, feeling a rush of angry tears. She seized the cloaked creature, who gave an angry hiss and raised 8 arms towards her. One hand had been charred into a twisted claw, one bore a sphere of crystal, and the other 6 bore the devilish paintbrushes, all dripping poison. The creature's face was cloaked in the shadow of the hood, so she could only see the neatly trimmed beard she remembered from her vision at Elwith's Rock. Elayna woke with a start. She lay in Leusios's arms, her nudity entwined with his. She stared through the unfinished roof beams to the stars high above, studded against night's canopy of black velvet. She breathed in the fresh night air and shuddered. He was still asleep. His white hair was so fine that it rippled in her gentle breath. Unsettled by the dream, she carefully extricated herself from his embrace and dressed. It had been a wonderful evening, and she had relished Leusios's accomplished lovemaking. But now she had to leave, without understanding why. As she hurried along the silent paths back to her farm, she could not help dwelling on the dream. She would have to tell Vibnia. Then a thought struck her. Was it too late to take a ball of barren leaf? Leusios did not know what to make of Elayna's disappearance, but was reassured to hear that she was back at her farm. He would give her time. He decided to return to his secret cabin to study, starting with alchemy. By the afternoon, he was convinced that lead would never turn into gold.
"Those Durian alchemists are idiots,"
he muttered, and picked up the gratuitous invenum morsum. He returned to the mystery blank book from time to time, trying to find a clue. Horth fluttered in through the open door.
"What's that?"
asked the raven.
"I'm not sure."
He showed the raven the blank pages.
"I can't believe anyone would go to the trouble of bringing something useless on such a long journey. And parchment is expensive."
"And the cover even more so. Exquisitely rare."
"What do you mean?"
"That's exceptionally fine leather. Notice anything unusual about it?"
Leusios was getting irritated by the raven's smugness.
"Astound me."
"It's human skin."
Leusios flinched in disgust and put the book down.
"We have a visitor."
Horth fluttered back out. Leusios followed him into the dappled woodland light, wiping his hands on his tunic.
Aha!
Their visitor was a messenger pigeon. She was feasting on the grain left out exactly for this purpose. The inception of Durian pigeons had come to him in a moment of inspiration. Horth would convince them to stop for grain, allowing Leusios to check any messages they carried. He had learned that the struggle between Thalianus and Caesonius was intensifying. The difference was stark. The Thaliani understood the value in Blackstone and invested to maximize the flow of gold. The Caesonii, in contrast, were slow to respond to Antoninus's repeated pleas for more men and equipment.
"To or from Duria?"
She's from Lasavonum, but the message capsule has the bear of Caesonius. It originated from Cervidium.
The Caesonius estates? Well done. Was it easily convinced?
She's been here before. Many of the messenger pigeons now know this as a good stop for food.
Leusios removed the message from the pigeon's leg.
I wonder if they'll shed any light on the weapon smuggling.
He wondered out loud. In a previous message, Thaliani strategists had asked Thelios Vitalius, Thaliados' new representative, if he knew who was running weapons to the orcs in their name. Nothing implied Caesonius was aware of it, making it an unsolved mystery. Leusios scanned through the tiny script and grimaced.
It's for Antoninus. Lord Caesonius has decided to take action against the Thaliani gold mines.
Fascinatingly vague. What kind of action?
It's not specific.
He reread the message thoughtfully.
He's been ordered to expect a man called Saulo sometime next year. There is an oblique reference here to Morvedunum fire. Sounds ominous.
Leusios carefully re-rolled the message and reattached it to the bird. The pigeon, its belly full of grain, labored back into the air.
Should I stop Saulo?
He had developed a habit of posing his questions to Horth, because the raven would read his thoughts and interrupt him anyway.
You think you should let him do his work?
Slowing Thalianos could be to our advantage. The longer neither house dominates, the safer we are.
He worked with the major for a couple of hours before breaking to eat. Then he decided to try something he had been thinking about for a while. When he had first discovered the cabin, he had found a pit in the floor lined with runes. Orthos now used it for food storage.
Open the pit.
Yes, Master Leusios, nodded Orthos and rolled back the rug. When the legionary had pulled open the new trap door, Leusios snapped his fingers at the Major.
Look here,
he said, indicating the pit. Her head turned mechanically, and eclectic fragments of thought surfaced. He picked his way through the memories that floated dead around him like autumn leaves. A ring catching the light of a candle. 2 stones, one white, one black. The pit opens. A dark-haired man manacled there. Who? An ally? Leusios could not see the face. His head was bowed, and the memory murky. He heard sobbing.
Who did you put in there?
Whispered Leusios.
What did you do to him?
The hand of fate at the whim of the Morse Pronuntius. The neatly trimmed beard of the magister loomed in the black marble chapel streaked with red.
The centuries of waiting are over.
The Morse Pronuntius is found.
An image of dark power shivered through Kasutra's mind, exciting and terrifying. Suddenly, the memories coiled like snakes and frayed into smoke.
Scorch it!
Leusios swore as his nebulous grip on the images disintegrated. He blinked and rubbed his eyes.
So who is this Pronuntius? And why do the cults think he's so damn important?
Leusios could now summon a spirit horse whenever he wanted, but he loved riding Saltator too much. By now, he was a good rider, and the hot sun had made the ground firm, so he made decent time. Soon after noon, he saw the peaks of the Forest Sisters, and by late afternoon he was riding through the woodland near Blackstone. The trade road was wide. The woods themselves were not too dense, mainly beech and oak with occasional thickets of hawthorn and holly. He picked up a movement, caught by the dappled sunlight through the canopy of leaves. He reined in, and after a moment's pause, he nudged Saltator forwards with his knees to take a closer look. He recognized Anya immediately. His childhood friend was walking in the woods with a man. That piqued his curiosity.
It's one of the metal skulls.
It was Horth's name for the Durians.
Which one?
Asked Leusios.
The angry young one.
Taneus?
He snuck closer. Stealth was unnecessary. The two of them had stopped for the kind of kiss that started at the lips and ran on to entwine both bodies. Durians and Keats. Why was he even surprised? It was inevitable, but what did that mean for Blackstone? He slipped back to the road and dwelled on the implications all the way back to Ledlow's stable yard on the edge of town. Leusios smiled and scratched Saltator behind the ears as he took the reins from Leusios. "How's he doing, Master Miller?"
"Still as frisky as a foal."
He grinned.
"I don't think he'll ever grow up."
Leusios clapped Leusios on the shoulder and headed into town. He enjoyed the ambience, especially in the market round. Once nearly empty, it was now full of noisy traders and craft folk. So recognizable from his white hair, people would notice him and give a cheery hail. He waved back and hummed to the ringing of iron from Hanley's forge, the scraping of builders mixing mortar, the sawing of carpenters, and the rumble of passing carts. Blackstone was booming, and he and Elayna had made it happen. What a pair they would make, if only she would say yes to him. Elayna visited Vibnia to make good on her promise about sharing her dreams. The priest listened intently, steepled fingers pressing against her lips. "What do you think it means?" Elayna asked. They were cozy in the priest's lodging as the storm lashed down outside. It was the first warning that autumn was coming. Elayna listened to the drumming of the rainfall as Vibnia took a while to answer. "This feels different. Before, you have received warnings, premonitions. Niall's death, Kerne's burning. Then there is the knocking dream. That is different again." Elayna nodded. The knocking dream was just that, the sound of someone knocking. Sometimes it was a heavy fist on an oak door, sometimes a polite tap, and sometimes an eerie scratching. The priest interlaced her fingers reflectively, her eyes focusing in the middle distance. Then she shook her head. "Kerne's body was never found, but I would not want to ascribe hope to a dream. Certainly one as cruel as this." Elayna had thought about that too. But Kerne was dead, and that pain was healing. She did not want to return there. "Perhaps it's the way his memory is being marred by the hunters justifying their actions." Vibnia shook her head, clearly unconvinced. "No, most people believe it was a tragic misunderstanding. Since his return from exile, Migrig and I have spoken of his guilt. Elayna, that was an act of remarkable commitment to our community." The priest praised her warmly. "The Corpus Vigilos seeks to bring people together for the greater good. Your decision to allow him back has changed the fortunes of Blackstone."
"I don't forgive him,"
Elayna cautioned the priest. Vibnia reached over to her small writing desk, a piece of Durian civilization in the wilds, and picked up a scroll case. "That I leave between you and Migrig, for now. Today, I have something to share with you." She unrolled the scroll. It was a list of names, dates, and symbols. "What's this?" asked Elayna. "Progress," murmured Vibnia. "It is customary for all Durians when traveling to say a prayer of thanks at the local Corpus church when they arrive safely and sign their name. I have copied all the names up to the point your father was killed." She pointed at the first block of names. "These are the various agents sent by the Prima Familia to investigate rumors of our gold. They all left. Then, here. This is the arrival of Thalianus. You can see Marcos's name there. More from Thalianus. Motorius Calanus. Caesonius arriving. Then many more houses and merchants." "And the marks?" Elayna asked, seeing the notation in Vibnia's precise hand. Vibnia pointed to each of the columns in turn. "Whether they had opportunity, whether they had an alibi, and whether they are still here." "You found out all this?" Elayna was bursting with gratitude. Vibnia gave a modest shrug. "It has been a work of many months. Many are legionaries, and their captains keep good records of where their soldiers are. That eliminates a great deal. Many more Durians have also left as our fortunes foundered. If our mark is amongst them, then—" Vibnia shook her head apologetically. Elayna would follow her father's killer to Duria if necessary, but only if she could be certain of her target. Vibnia ran her finger down a column of crosses as she continued. "Many more give alibis to others without being aware of it.
Casual comments made in ignorance make the most convincing exonerations.
Elayna counted the tally of people still in Blackstone who had opportunity and no alibi.
7 names. If the assassin is still here, it's one of them.
It was chilling that she recognized several, including Teneos, Toledo, Ledlos, and... No.
Surely Matorius is too old. And Teneos is secretly seeing my best friend. I really like these people.
Vibnia gave her a cool look.
Killing with precision is a matter of skill, not strength. And the best assassin is someone you like.
That's the end of Chapter 22, Blackstone Booms. Next time, we'll catch up on the war in the south as Valiados and Kerne launch their attack on Fort Farazda. Chris would like to say a big thank you to everyone coming on this journey with us. He wanted you to know he's made a few changes as we've been working together, and we'll let you know when the updates come out in the print and the Kindle versions of the book. Thanks to all those who have shared Blackstone so far, and we'll see you next chapter.